right, everyone. So, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Today, we got my good friend Joe Masita. First of all, Joe, I just want to thank you for coming on. Me and Joe actually met each other as freshmen. Well, I guess I was a sophomore, he was a freshman, but young 18, 19-year-olds back in the UNC Chapel Hill days. We ended up joining the same fraternity, and super grateful to have Joe on. Joe's a young guy that's done wonderful things in his short career already. He is in the commercial real estate market up there in New York City doing the whole Wolf of Wall Street thing, except on the real estate side of things. So yeah, before we jump into it, Joe, just give the audience a little bit of background of who you are and just how you ended up here today.
Yeah, so like you said, started at UNC. I always had an interest in real estate. Always wanted to get into the investment side of it. I want to own some of my own buildings one day, so it seemed like a natural path. I'm an investment sales agent with Invictus Property Advisors. Basically, we help people sell their buildings and then occasionally help people buy buildings.
That's awesome. Yeah, definitely love the goal. Setting the bar high, wanting to own your own building one day. No doubt you're going to be able to do it. It's just a matter of time. But you mentioned real estate has always been interesting to you. So when did that kind of shift happen? Like, hey, like I really want to be in real estate, and what is that? And then why did you ultimately decide to go into commercial instead of residential? So I guess a two-part question for you.
Yeah. So going into UNC, I wanted to do the whole investment banking thing. Then I ended up speaking with a bunch of people in both industries. A lot of the commercial real estate people seemed more the lifestyle I wanted to live. They're talking to people every day, going to events. Like I talked to probably 30 people a day minimum. A lot of those being new clients, new people. That part of the industry really spoke to me. A lot of the investments banking side, of course, everybody knows about the long hours. There's long hours in commercial real estate too. But a lot of those guys wanted to eventually invest in real estate one day. And to do that, you need brokers, you need to have the knowledge. I wanted to just kind of skip the middleman or be the middleman myself. Pretty fortuitously, right as I was thinking about this whole switch, UNC came out with a brand new minor. I was the first graduating class of the real estate finance minor, so it seemed kind of like fate. There was only 10 of us. They were very attentive, helped us all get internships, jobs. It was really a great program, so it kind of seemed like everything just worked out perfectly. So that's how I kind of got into the commercial real estate side of things and loved it after my first internship, wanted to keep going with it.
It's crazy because the whole reason I kind of started this podcast was because I was like, okay, where do I want to eventually end up? And I want to end up being, a real estate investor, a big one. So I was like, why don't I just talk to other people in real estate investing? And it seems like you kind of had the same idea. You're like, everyone's getting into IB to get into real estate. So why not just directly get into real estate? So, no, that's awesome to just look that far ahead and kind of just start at the end and then work your way back to the beginnings. That's all. New York, did it ever cross your mind to not go back to New York to go to another market, or was New York City always top of mind for you post college?
Yeah, New York City was always top of mind. I mean, as you know, I grew up on Long Island, so it was kind of, aside from the family being here, a bunch of friends and all that, there's really no better place to do commercial real estate besides New York City. Just, I mean, the amount of buildings, there's a ton of buildings. And then a lot of the people here, they're some of the best in the industry, some of the biggest investors, a lot of money from other countries. It's another thing I liked. A lot of our investors, you don't know, they might come from China. Japan is very big right now. They have a very creative way of depreciating assets where they're able to beat a lot of the local investors. So you just really see a lot of different facets of the investment side, the more institutional groups, and then just private investors, private families, people who've been here. I've spoken with, you know, cops in Brooklyn who made a great investment back when they were starting out, bought a building for, 50,000. It's worth a couple million today. And they parlayed it into giant real estate portfolio, retired early. And there's just so many different stories, so many things that you learn in each neighborhood. It's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, real estate especially is more of like a network kind of business. So it really does make sense going back to New York City, like one of, if not the financial hub of the entire world. So yeah, that's an awesome nugget. And then being from there, you just being comfortable with New York City and going back, I'm sure was a easy coming back home and just jumping right into work. So with you coming
Exactly.
back and then young kid, bright lights, what did it look like in your early days in commercial real estate? How many hour days? What all were you doing? And how has that kind of transitioned into what you do today? Are you still doing more of the same, or has it changed a little bit? Are you more just, shaking hands nowadays and making deals.
Yeah, it's definitely changed a good bit. Still doing some of the same when I started. The first couple months, all cold calling, a lot of dials. Probably was going 75 to 100 cold calls a day. Um,
That's insane.
and just trying to, yeah. But yeah, I knew what the job was. I knew that was going to be the start. It's really just about consistency, getting through that portion. There's always going to be cold calls, but you eventually get used to them. They start to warm up. You're speaking to clients that you've done some deals with. But yeah, in the beginning, it was just pounding the phones, getting a lot of volume in, trying to set up a lot of meetings, trying to form those early relationships. I'm definitely still in the early years. There's a lot of these people have been in the industry like 40 plus years. They really say you're still in your early years till about 5 years in. So, but still now it's a lot more warmer calls. I'm actively trying to move deals forward that I'm currently hired on, or working on other projects for clients as well. So it's still probably maybe around 50 dials a day, but those dials have gone up a lot in longer duration instead of volume. So maybe a little bit more quality over quantity in the calls. Also in the beginning, I was qualifying my database. There, a lot of those numbers might have been wrong or not in service, that sort of thing. Now most of my database is clean. I know who I'm calling. I know who the decision makers are, and I'm getting to the right people.
I've never had to do cold calls myself, but hearing from people like you and some other people, I've heard they're pretty brutal. Do you want to maybe share a story of one of the worst responses you've got? Keep it clean, but what's one of the worst responses you've gotten from a cold call?
Yeah, so definitely been cursed out a bunch of times. Let's see, a good PG one was I called this lady. I sold the building down the block from her. So that's how you kind of generate new business. Like, hey, just want to let you know, sold the building down the block. We got a great price. This is why. Immediately, she thought I was like, I don't know, like her ex or a different neighbor or something. Because I was like, hey, it's Joe Masita from Invicta. She's like, I told you to never call me again. Like, blah, blah. Starts cursing me out. I'm like, I've never spoken with you before. And then she's like, all right, she hangs up. Then she calls me back. And I'm like, oh God. So I answer. I'm like, hi, it's did you come around? Did you realize I'm not? Immediately just starts screaming. She's like, I can't believe what you did to me. The nerve to call this number. I'm like, oh my God, I have no idea who this lady thinks I am. And so
Yeah,
I actually just hung up. I just blocked the number. I was like, all right, that's I'll try to find someone else.
that's so funny. I'm
But
so glad that I didn't. I've never had to go through that experience. Hopefully, I don't have to. But that's only going to build up the muscle. And like you said, you went from 100 cold calls a day to now they're more warmer leads. You kind of have relationships with certain people now, and call duration goes up because you're just trying to qualify the database. So that's awesome. But just
mhm.
staying on the path of hard times. What's one big loss, or maybe what's a loss that you can share with us about just being a young guy in the industry?
Yeah, so I try to take something away from every loss. So one pretty big one I guess I had recently was I was working on this deal in Brooklyn, beautiful brownstone, vacant. It was going to be a condo conversion, or it will be a condo conversion. I didn't get the deal, obviously, that's why it's a loss. Very close on it. The owner wanted something with a six in front, so low sixes, 6 million, something like that. I had somebody at 5.7 million. We're negotiating. They're willing to come up a bit, and they ended up going with somebody who was at I didn't have, this was it's called an open listing, so I didn't have full control. I wasn't hired on a contract. Usually you don't do these, but sometimes when you're young in the industry and you have somebody who you think might jump quickly on this, makes it's worth the risk.
Yeah, you got to
Usually
take
a
it.
waste of time. Yeah, exactly. So usually a waste of time. This was maybe, I don't know, maybe 6 to 8 months ago now. But so beautiful brownstone. I have 5.7 million on the table. They end up, the owner calls him back. He goes, hey Joe, sorry to tell you this. We're going with somebody. They're at 5.7 million. I'm like, what happened? I have that. They go, they're willing to do a 2 week close. So they just wanted to be done with this, get the money quick, no financing, all cash, 2 week close. 10% deposit too, so they're putting $570,000 down.
Wow.
So I was like, it just taught me a lesson in understand what your client's needs are. If I knew that that was a driving factor for them, I could have had my client do a 1 week closing. They were a pretty big institutional group. They were willing to move quickly. I just didn't know that was one of their pain points. So going forward, I try to ask, like, what are the biggest things, like what's most important to you with the sale? Is it purely the money, Or do you want the money quick? You want to be done with this? I mean, some of these people that own these buildings are so rich, an extra 300,000 doesn't mean much for them, rather than the aggravation that they have to go through to get it. So that's something I try to keep mind of now, and it helped me with a few other deals in the future after that one. So
I hear you. Yeah, it's always good to know what the motivating factor is, whether it's speed,
Mhm.
money, just the hassle of it all. With that being only 6 to 8 months ago, have you had a chance to maybe, take something away from that loss and learn something from it, or are you still kind of recovering from that?
I mean, I'll always be recovering from that because it would have been a very nice fee. But I had two others since then. I had one close 4 days ago, so that one was nice. A nice $3.5 million one. Similar, it was an open listing. I sold a building down the block. The owner called me. He was like, "Hey, I know you did this." It was a difficult situation. It was an estate, ex-wife and ex-husband. We got it done. Understood what his pain points were. He wanted the deal. Same thing. He wanted the deal done fast. He wanted to be out of this whole legal battle with his ex-wife. So we got it done quickly. It was a pretty fun one. We emailed three buyers. One was interested at the pricing. Spoke to him. Moved quickly. 25-day close. This deal started in like November, so it was good. It was a quick one. That usually doesn't happen. Usually they're about 90 to 120-day closes.
That's awesome. How long did it get used to being, or I guess my question is, how long did it take for you to get used to all these big numbers being thrown around? You go from college and it's like you and your friends are trying to scrub together 20, $30 to get a pizza, and now you're talking, different, like you said, it's like an extra 300,000 doesn't really matter to these people. So how long did it take for you to get used to and kind of get desensitized to these seven-figure numbers getting thrown around?
Yeah, it's still a little crazy because sometimes when you get up to the bigger numbers, like in the $10 million, $20 million range, for most of the deals I'm working on, probably took a year to get used to this. Because these people would, I'm trying to convince them, like, yeah, come on, it's just another $100,000. Meanwhile, like, that's still a huge deal for someone as young as us in the industries.
Yeah.
Still never fully get used to it, but I'm able to be desensitized enough where I can talk like and act like I'm used to it. So that's, I guess,
Fake
the
it till you
important
make
part
it,
of that.
right? That's what they say.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. But okay, I guess kind of shifting to current market insight, how would you describe the current state of commercial real estate? There's a lot of people saying commercial is safer now than residential with the rates going up so high. So, what do you feel is like the current market sentiment and how interest rates are having an effect on deal flow and what investors are looking to buy and sell?
Yeah, so I think the current sentiment is more hopeful than it was in recent years. So when I started in 2023, people were saying it was the worst commercial real estate market since the 2008, 2009 financial crisis and all that. I mean, still, like you said before, I was a little desensitized to it all because it was the only market I knew. I didn't know a better market, and I still really don't. Most investors, most buyers, most sellers are saying now is not the time to sell. Now is not the time to buy. The interest rate environment directly relates to people's returns, how they capitalize the purchases. It doesn't have a direct relationship to cap rates, but it influences them a lot. So the deal flow is definitely down a lot right now to what I've heard from the peaks of 2016, 2019. Another part of that is legislative risk and just macroeconomic factors. So New York State keeps making it more difficult for these people to invest in these properties. Very tenant friendly rather than landlord friendly. A lot of investors are selling, taking their assets to Florida, something like that. But I mean, on the other side, it does feel like it's picking up. I have more buyers calling me. I have more sellers saying like, "Hey, I have my mortgage coming up. Do I want to refinance? Do I want to sell? Can you evaluate this for me? Can you put together some numbers to see what would be best?" So from when I've been in the industry, this seems like a much more hopeful time. Meanwhile, people who have been at 10 plus years are like, "Oh, this is awful still," but I'm staying pretty positive. It's still a lot of fun. We're getting some deals done. So
Yeah, no. I think it's going to end up working out better for you because your baseline is more reasonable. And so if, interest rates are hopefully going to keep going down, but if one day they go back right up to 7 or 8 or even 9%, you're going to be like, okay, like, I've done this before, I can do it again. But
exactly. I think it's actually helpful because I'm learning in the toughest environment. So then I'm going to have
100%.
these skills, these all the fundamentals down when the market does get better. it'll be a lot easier.
I also don't think people fully appreciate yet what happened in 22 and 23. There was the big COVID real estate boom of 20 and 21, and then, being a
Mhm.
young kid right out of college going into real estate, it's something that's directly impacted by interest rates. It almost kind of feels like graduating in 2008. It wasn't as severe, but it's still pretty crazy time being a young guy going to work in real estate. So, kudos to you for that. What would you say is unique about the New York City real estate or commercial real estate market right now? I know you mentioned people are maybe kind of shying away due to legislative factors, but and I know you said you're kind of hopeful still, but what would you say about what's interesting about New York City or what's unique about it?
Yeah, so what's unique about New York City and or interesting is even when the market is at its worst, somebody always has an angle, somebody always has an edge. There's always going to still be market movement. So say, a smaller market where there's not as much focus or as much investment, the market actually might maybe slow to a stop. New York City, it's biggest financial center in the world, one of the most important cities in the world. Somebody somewhere in the world is always going to have an angle. Like we were working with this company, their capital comes from a royal family in like some country, like Sweden or something, where they have a special angle. Like I said before, the Japanese have a special angle of depreciating assets. So even when the local investors, the normal players in the game, the institutional groups that are based in New York City are bearish, there's going to be somebody who comes in, changes it up. Movement is always good. Transaction volume, movement is always good to test the market. So that's what's great about New York City.
Yeah, I actually want to go, at the end of the day, I am a CPA. I am a nerd for taxes and bookkeeping, so I kind of want to, take a slight turn and go more down that route and talk about that. What do you know? This is the first time I'm hearing about this. I'll have to do some more research after we get off this podcast, but what is the Japanese thing from your understanding of it? What's this a magical Japanese tax loophole?
Yeah, so I don't know if it's still like this, but for a period of time they had 0% interest rates. So they would want to park the money in America, but for a specific type of wood framed buildings, they were able to accelerate the depreciation. Um, which of course I don't know the whole, like you said, I know the commercial real estate side and why they want to do this. I don't know how it actually benefits them so greatly in their taxes, but accelerated depreciation with these specific wood frame buildings, and they would be willing to pay absurd prices. Some still are.
That's crazy. Like you said, I don't expect you to go reading up on it, but I'm definitely going to. But have you maybe had more Japanese investors because of that whenever that rule was in place?
Definitely. And we've made some relationships with Japanese brokers because obviously I don't speak Japanese. So they actually have their connections from Japan. They represent them. They give us some criteria. They say, hey, prime location, Soho, West Village only for this one. They want wood frame building, this many units or lower, and then a few other factors. And then they'll send that to a bunch of brokers. And then when we have the deals, it's incentive for us because they're like willing to pay premium. Anytime like they're willing to pay a premium above market, I might make a few extra calls that I wouldn't normally, or like hit up a few extra owners that are usually more difficult to get to. But yeah, it's an interesting dynamic because you're working with another broker who represents their client, which usually you want to represent buyer and seller yourself.
Yeah. Wow, that's a couple amazing nuggets over there. From shifting back to an American investor, from your experience, how does tax and bookkeeping, how do you see this fitting into them analyzing deals, deciding what they're going to take on, or just kind of foreseeing problems, cap rates, things like that? So how do you see tax and even bookkeeping, keeping organized books, actually knowing how much you're making or how much you're losing? How do you see all this playing into kind of these?
Yeah, very important, especially with a lot of these the capital gains taxes, because a lot of these owners have purchased prior to 2000 for, they're building less than $100 then, now worth millions, upwards of $3 million now. So their capital gains implications are huge. We have 1031 exchange partners. There's something called DST, Delaware Statutory Trust, basically a REIT, a real estate investment trust, but you can 1031 into it. And then just 1031 investors in general are um, a huge market that we try to keep track of because, like I said, with the Japanese groups, they tend to pay premiums because there's a certain amount of time. You have 45 days to identify and then 180 days to close on these properties. If someone's timer is ticking down, they're willing to stretch to make sure they get this deal. So obviously my job is trying to find the best buyers and sell these buildings for the highest price. So sometimes the capital gains ruins a deal because they're like, oh my God, I didn't realize I'd be having to pay this much. I don't have anything I want to 1031 into. Let's just wait. I know these are great offers, but let's just wait until I find something I want to 1031 into. So definitely
Yeah,
planning, bookkeeping, all that, extremely important. Save you hundreds of thousands of dollars.
yeah. The 1031 is. I remember the first time I read about it, I was like, the government is literally incentivizing you to keep investing into real estate. They're incentivizing you to make money. And what you were
Yep.
talking about is 45 days to identify the property, 180 days to actually close on that property. So that's huge for investors. Like you said, if their basis is in the hundreds of dollars and they're looking to sell in the millions, that's pretty much a six-figure tax bill they're looking at. So it's definitely good to have, whether it's an investment banker or your CPA or someone who's in commercial real estate, someone who's in real estate, to understand the tax implications of all this. That's huge, and that's definitely going to make you guys stand out, especially having those key relationships,
Yeah.
people who do 1031 exchanges. Yeah, but I won't bore you or the audience with any more tax questions. So I actually want to get into a couple of rapid fire questions with you, with the goal of hopefully helping someone out who maybe wants to get into this, maybe a younger guy who's listening to this. What
Mm-hmm.
is some advice for someone entering into commercial real estate, whether young, whether career switch? What is your advice?
Definitely play the. I would say you have to look long term. I mean, for someone getting in the industry, they say to have about 2 years of savings. You might not get paid a single dollar for that entire time. It's not a get rich quick scheme. You can, if you get a crazy sale done your first year, which certainly has happened, you can have more money than you've ever had in your bank account, but you have to play the long game. That's could be a lucky sale. You have to do the little things. I think the two most important things are persistence and then consistency. If you're not feeling well, you still have to get in, do that volume, do your dials, make those connections, because a lot of the time you won't see the fallout of, if you took this week easy or something for 3 months out. It's a 90-day rule. I think it's common in a lot of sales. You don't see the fallout of your lack of effort in your pipeline for a couple months out. Then you kind of get into a bad mindset. You're like, oh my God, why is my pipeline dry? It's because I took a week off 3 months ago, which a lot of people
Yeah,
don't realize. But if you're entering, no, it's going to be difficult. You have to look long term. They don't say. I told someone the other day, oh yeah, I've been in the industry about 2.5 years, and they're like, huh, another 2.5 to go to see if you can survive it. I was like, oh, wow, yeah, way to put it in perspective.
halfway through.
But yeah, yeah, halfway through to see if I even make it. But I'm very confident. I love it so far. Great team, great
Yeah.
company, and have a few sales to carry me through.
Well, I mean, you're right. If someone, no matter rain, snow, or shine, or if he's sick, or if he's just tired, if that person gets up and does even like 20 phone calls a day, he's going to beat the guy who gets just randomly inspired one day of the week and calls 50 people. So the guy who's consistent, even if it's lower numbers to start off at first, is going to beat the guy who just acts based on impulse and emotion and whether he's feeling like it or not. So definitely a great nugget there for anyone who's listening.
Correct.
Yeah.
And yeah, and with that consistency comes a lot of like the luck that people say there is. Like I can't tell you how many times I made a random phone call and it's led to, like, a couple months ago I made a random phone call to this one guy who I thought owned one building. He's like, "Hey, I'm standing next to this guy who was somebody I've been trying to meet with for months." I was like, didn't even know they were connected, didn't even know they were friends. Ended up setting a lunch, and I've done 2 deals with them now. So just out of nowhere, these crazy things can just happen, and it's luck, but it's out of those consistency of just making those dials.
Yeah, I think no, yeah, that's that. First of all, that's a phenomenal story. Second of all, I don't know who said this, but I think I heard someone say when you're working hard, they'll ask you why you're working so hard, and then when you get the sale or you accomplish something, they'll ask how you got so lucky. So
Yep,
it's crazy. But going off that,
definitely.
obviously you're a very motivated guy, successful guy at a young age. What's one book you'd recommend, whether it's for real estate, more like technical knowledge, or something that's general business mindset, success kind of book? So what's one book you'd recommend?
I feel like this is very well known, but How to Win Friends and Influence People was very good. I learned a lot of lessons from that. Never Split the Difference. I read that, and then I also listened to the master class as well. He did like a whole like putting those systems into action and like against real people, which was very cool. So
Yeah,
there's a lot of negotiating and a lot of working people in this business. So those two probably stand out.
especially being in sales, man, having to shake hands, make phone calls. I think that first book you said, How to Win Friends and Influence People, that one is huge for anyone who hasn't read it. It's very
Hmm.
old, but it's timeless. So that one's awesome.
Yeah.
What, besides staying in the industry for another 2.5 years, what's your next big goal?
Six, I want to close 5 deals. 2025, I had three. So I want to keep growing. Five, it's a big goal, especially where the market is. But I mean, I got three. Two of those, like I said before, felt lucky, but and then one came right at the end of the year. But yeah, I think it's a doable, achievable goal. I think it's realistic, and yeah, just always growing, always trying to keep things in the pipeline. I think with my current pipeline, I could achieve five this year.
Let's make it happen. What, and then this last question actually just popped up in my mind. And being in a business where
Hmm.
it's very entrepreneurial, you kind of eat what you kill. How important is it to budget because you don't necessarily know when your next close is coming? How important was personal finance and budgeting to your life, and how important should it be if you're trying to get into commercial real estate?
Extremely, extremely. Yeah, like you said, I don't know. A lot of times, I don't know when my next paycheck is coming, and then when they do, they're all in a. It's a large lump sum that might be, half a year's salary in that one lump sum. So I try to keep now. I try to keep like 8 months of savings, just in case, God forbid, I don't do a deal for 8 months, that I can still keep up with my lifestyle. Pay rent and eat, most basic things. And I'm pretty, even living in New York City, I'm pretty good about budgeting. Try to keep my nights out to reasonable prices, reasonable maybe once or twice a week. And that's with, a lot of these happy hours and stuff will also have like free food and stuff. That helps. But yeah, I mean, New York City is expensive. And if you don't budget, these finances, a couple drinks can get away from you quickly.
Yeah, no, I can see that, but it's very good. You got a good head on your shoulders. You're thinking about it the right way. A lot of people will see that big paycheck and go buy their first Rolex, and then they're done, and then they're back on mom's couch. So it's definitely awesome
Yep.
that you have that perspective. Are they? And then I'm sure they're paying you 1099. So it's also important to set aside some money for taxes as well from that big paycheck. So what's one last takeaway that you want listeners to walk away with today?
For commercial real estate specifically, it's a great industry. You'll meet a lot of friends. Pretty much everybody is outgoing because they have to be. You're talking to people all the time, but it's difficult. You have to look long term. It's not get rich quick. And if you want to succeed, you have to do the little things, as boring as they may be, some of them every day, consistent day in and day out. But if you stick with it, you do the right things, you don't have to reinvent the wheel or anything. You will succeed over time.
And where can people find you? Whether they're looking to buy a building, sell a building in New York City, where can people find you and connect with you and see what you got going on?
I'm very easy to find. If you just search Joe Maceda, the company comes up, bio comes up, phone numbers, emails, LinkedIn, everything comes up pretty easily.
Joe Maceda, everyone, thank you so much for coming on today. We've all learned a lot. I know I've learned a lot speaking for myself. If you need tax help, bookkeeping help, if you're listening to this, reach out, email me at info@sargascpa.com. But yeah, thank you so much, Joe.
Of course, thanks for having me, Sargus. Good to see you, buddy.